Maybe I'll find it for you. Oh no! Let's take a roll. No, I'm just kidding.
You still have one.
I can surely take it. Thank you.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Probably the first 2 pages. Yeah, I don't think that one's separate.
I'm just trying. Like, she's like, you've been good, because I was like, I thought we were almost done. I grabbed that.
Yeah, I was going to do it.
Are you guys current on your CPR? No, so we did ours online. Like 10 minutes, and it costs $18. And you get the child infant and don't have to stay this Saturday. So it qualifies for all of that if you want that information tonight. Yeah. Okay.
Is this just to fill out? For the class
Most of
to go
us.
along and
I mean, have you been? I mean, you can watch all the videos. Like, I used to be an instructor.
So, this is just for your.
We've been
So,
to the course
we're
before.
$18, and I think if I could do the right code,
Any
probably
classes
maybe
you watch in person.
Oh my gosh.
You just keep.
But it said everything that
Sign
they
in
required,
sheet.
and they send you a nice little
Is what you get credit for.
handy
And
DVD.
then that.
Yeah.
CPR card right there.
Well, and I'll have you take a picture so you know where to go on it.
Okay, so just
Yeah,
scan it.
just take a picture of it and go to this. And I think if you put CPR 10, it's either CPR 10 or CPR 17. I can't remember.
Thanks, Dana.
It's the 10%, but it's only 18 to get your child into AED. It's all of them. Yes. So if you're not one, just give us a. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then I just emailed the PDF dash.
So we're just gonna wait a couple more minutes for Jennifer to come down.
It's the same.
I might just start with that.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'll even fill out the book. And then when you go to get fingerprints, the police station charges $15 to get your prints. The nanny shipping charges $14. So she's saying, do you like the dollar? But it's just a shipping company option. It's downtown somewhere. But she was really fast. It was easy. So it's $1 less. I think that's how she keeps her business. It's just $1 less than the police station. But she's there like every day from 9 to 5. Or the police station, you have to go in the right hours. And so we did find that going to her was easy because she just does it. So that was the other thing that we just had. Are we in glasses?
All right, do you guys all have your worksheets to follow along? All right, so we can go ahead and get started. My name's Jana Hanna. I'm one of the assistant clinical directors here at Hope and Home. Jennifer Swan is our licensing director. She will be coming into this class at some point tonight. We're kind of going to switch off in between classes. Oh, my monitor's not on. Turn it on. Make sure people can see me. assume they'll call Ashley if they can't see what's happening. So like I said, Jennifer's going to come down here and we're going to tag team this class. This is Core 4, Adoption and Legal. So this is where we kind of get down to the nitty gritty of what you're getting into as far as the legal system. Before we get started, can we just go around the room? You can introduce yourselves to me. Let me know where you're at in the process and what you're interested in as far as placements. That would be awesome.
We are Eric and Stephanie Cooley, and so this is our last of the core classes.
Okay.
And so I think they're close to placing us with our home supervisor. We just,
Okay.
next month they'll do our thing, and then we are kind of open to 0 to 18 months and then 6 to 10 years. It's kind of how our house is
Okay.
set up, and we are open to foster, to adopt, and just being the revolving door for a safe placement.
Okay.
It's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
So we have a 7 and a 4-year-old. So our
Okay.
son is 7, almost 8, and our daughter's 4.
All right. Great. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you.
For Sandy and Keith, Brennan Stoll, first class,
Ooh,
so
exciting.
brand new. We'll foster is what we're looking for.
Okay.
And then kind of that 6-year-oldish to
Okay.
12-ish, give or take, and sibling group. Our kids are older. We have a almost 17 and then a 20-year-old.
Wow,
So-
okay. So you were almost empty nesters, and now you're like, you know what, let's do this again.
It's hard.
That's what happened when I filled the
Yeah.
nest back up.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's hard. You have space, and then
Mhm.
now your heart
Space.
just aches.
Yeah,
And for
absolutely.
kids, it's silly not to
Mhm.
fill the space. So
Yeah.
purely practical, not because
Mhm.
I am longing to take
Yeah.
care of some more
Yeah.
children. So
Yeah. Okay.
yes,
And remind me your last name again?
Brennan Stoll.
Brendan Stool, okay. I won't see most of you again until you are licensed and have kids in your home, so I try to put faces to names during this process.
Oh yeah,
So.
you've got the longest class.
Yeah. All right, Brendan Stool. Cooley. And you guys?
We are the Walshes. I'm Scott. This is Mary. We have 2 daughters, 4 and 1, soon to be 5 and 2. We've been in Colorado Springs about 2 months.
This is our first class.
This is our first
Okay,
class.
wow.
We were brand new. I had no idea what to do.
So you came to Colorado and said, okay, let's foster. Great.
That's exactly what
That's
happened.
exactly what happened.
All right.
We have the room, and we're going to be here longer than we lived anywhere for
Okay.
our whole marriage, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so we have the time to finally do it. So,
Mhm.
range-wise, we're looking to foster or foster to adopt, whatever is needed. And I think what we said was we could have a girl or a boy if they were under 4, something like that, younger than our older daughter.
Well, if they're girls, I think we'll go as old as 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boys, we want to be a little more friendly because we have to get, so we want
Okay.
to be
Yeah.
to age 4.
Awesome. Well, it's great to meet you guys. A little bit about me. I've been at Hope and Home now almost 4 years. I started as a home supervisor, and as we grew, we needed to kind of move our home supervision staff up. So Jess Engel and myself are assistant clinical directors, and part of what we do is supervise our home supervisors. So they're the people who will be in your home monthly, providing that ongoing support, training, just kind of being that arm of Hope and Home to you guys. So Jess and I supervise them, and then we also make placements. So you'll be hearing from us a lot, especially in those first couple of weeks when you are first licensed, you're waiting for placements in your home. You'll be getting a lot of phone calls from me and Jess. So, Ashley, my monitor's not on. Is that an issue? I don't know. I just want to make sure everybody can see me.
It's just for your record.
Okay. I was just stressed about that. So just to go ahead and get started here, I want you guys to know some important phone numbers. So the first one is the Colorado Abuse and Neglect Hotline. That's your first fill in the blank there. As foster parents, you're going to be mandatory reporters. So you might have already done your mandatory reporting training. You guys will do that somewhere along the way. And that mandatory report, that hotline report, that's what starts the trajectory of a kiddo coming into foster care. So you guys are going to want to have that number either saved in your phone or just accessible so that you know if you ever see something, you'll need to report that. The other number you want to keep track of is the Hope and Home on-call phone number. One of the benefits of being a Hope and Home family is you get access to one of our home supervisors 24/7. We always have a home supervisor on call, and then either Jess or myself is kind of the backup supervisor on call, so you always have access to one of us. If there are ever any urgent needs after hours, we don't ever want our families to feel alone, like they have to navigate the system without any extra support. So that on-call number, that's your emergency after hours line. And it also doubles as our placement phone. Jess and myself usually use our personal cell phone numbers to make placements, so I'll make sure you know that number as well before leaving here. But our after-hours home supervisor will make emergency placements in the middle of the night, and they'll be calling you from that on-call number. So make sure you have that saved. Maybe add a special ringtone for it so that it wakes you up in the middle of the night. We do get calls all throughout the night, so expect us to be waking you up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, desperately asking for placements. That will happen at some point. So those are those two numbers. Any questions so far on that stuff? Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, as foster parents, you're mandatory reporters, you're not investigators. Often when kiddos come into care, they're going to realize that they're in a safe place. They're going to start opening up about their past, about different fears that they might have. Your job is to be a safe adult and to listen. Your job isn't to ask questions. It's actually been shown that the more kiddos are kind of probed about their trauma, the less their testimony is going to hold up in court. So we want to be really careful about not compromising that at all. There are professionals who are trained to ask the right questions in the right way. That's not your job. Your job is just to be that safe, comforting adult for kiddos. Oh yeah, I already said that. Next bullet. Go me. I wasn't even looking at it. Any questions on that? Okay. So as far as the adoption and legal process, at Hope and Home, we are looking for families for children, not children for families. One thing that makes Hope and Home really special is that a lot of families come here longing to adopt and longing to fill their family. And that makes for some really special foster families. You know, we're never concerned that a kiddo is not going to be well cared for in one of our homes. Excuse me. So that's something really special, but we have to keep in mind that our number one goal is to find safe families for kids, not to help families adopt. We love it. We celebrate it when it happens. But that's not our number one goal. Sorry, you guys, I'm struggling up here. Another thing to keep in mind as you start this process, it's birth parents versus the county, not birth parents versus foster parents. You're going to feel a lot of times throughout this process that it's you versus the bio family. And obviously, if we were to hold you guys up against a biological family, you have more resources, you have more training, you have more support. You're always going to come out looking like the better parent. That's not what this is about. The system is set up so that families can work toward a treatment plan, which is meant to kind of rehabilitate and get the family back together. And what the court is looking for is minimal safety standards in order to keep families together. You guys are always going to come out above minimal safety standards. I mean, even just in this process, we weed out so many families along the way because we want to make sure that our families are of the highest quality and the highest caliber. I don't say that to scare you guys. I say that to affirm that you're in a really awesome place here, and we want to make sure that our kids are well cared for. So keep that in mind as you navigate this process and this system. It's never you versus them. And it's usually so much more effective and beneficial for children if these kiddos can see that it's you with their bio family, not against them. we'll talk more about kind of the loyalty issues that come up when kids are in care. It can be really challenging to feel like if I attach to this family, I'm betraying mom and dad, or if I get comfortable here, maybe my mom and dad won't love me anymore. Like, a lot of those things come up for kiddos. So the more they can see that you are supportive of their family, that you're on the same page, the easier it's going to be for them. Another challenge that comes up is that you, as foster parents, have 100% of the responsibility and 0% of the rights. That is one of the major challenges that comes up on this journey. You're doing the day-to-day care. You know, as soon as kiddos wake up in the morning and until they go to bed at night, it's you caring for these children. And their bio family maybe gets a couple of hours a week doing the visits, and yet they get all the say in whether or not they can get their hair cut, whether or not they can get immunizations. You'll learn more about that in your Volume 7 class. You guys have already taken that, so you know the drill. That can be very, very challenging because you know it's hard. You have these kiddos in your home. You want to make sure they're well cared for. You want to make sure they don't feel isolated, like you're treating your own kiddos different than them. But we have to keep in mind that their bio family has a say in how they're cared for, and we want to honor that for them. There's not much that bios have power and control over in the system, and so where we can give them a little bit of dignity, where we can give them a little bit of say, it can be very beneficial. So on the flip side of that, they have 0% of the responsibility and 100% of the rights. There's that. So Icebreakers. I don't get to facilitate these much anymore, but they are one of my favorite things, honestly, about the beginning of a case. The point of an icebreaker, so they're informal meetings between the biological family and the foster family. And their purpose is to open the lines of communication between the family, between you. They establish a positive relationship and help you understand the needs of the child in order to provide the best care. They're facilitated by your home supervisor and or the caseworker. We like to do them here because this feels like a safe place for kiddos. It doesn't feel threatening, it feels natural. Especially if I'm facilitating it, I like it to kind of be on my home turf so I know what's going on. I can control the situation a little bit. And these meetings can be really scary for families on both sides. So as foster families, you see bios as kind of a monster. You know, they've been abusive, they've been neglectful, and you have this picture in your head that they're going to be a threat to you and your family. The same goes for bio families. All they see on the news are foster families who are abusive to children, who are in it for the money, who don't allow any of their foster care stipend to actually go to the children. So having these meetings kind of puts a face to the system, and it helps lower the fear and anxiety that comes with opening a foster care case. And I found that they can be really, really impactful for foster families and for the kiddos because they can see, okay, everybody's getting along here. This isn't a you versus them. This is a team thing. It can be very, very beneficial, and it allows for some dignity in the process too. When I facilitate these, I always ask questions like, do you have any family traditions that you want to make sure we honor in the foster home? What do you do for birthdays? Do you have a bedtime routine? Do you have any family recipes you want me to try out? What's your kiddo's favorite TV show? Do they have a favorite cartoon character? All those types of things kind of allow bios to feel like they can be bought into the process with you. And it helps the child's needs to be met. It's very scary for kiddos to come into care, and so if we can provide some continuity of, okay, I could always depend on this every year for my birthday, or I could always depend on Saturday morning pancakes, or whatever it was in the home. If we can understand that and get to know that, it's always going to be better for the family. And that last point there is it builds alliances between birth and foster families. Any questions at all? Feel free to talk back to me. I don't really want to talk for 3 hours straight. Kind of start to get out of breath
Do you
a little bit.
Are you giving the birthdays when you get the kids? Get that
Yes.
kind of stuff, so you know
Yeah.
right away what birthdays
When a child comes into care, and I'll probably talk more about this later when we get to placement, depending on whether or not it's an emergency placement, we have more or less information. But always within the first week of placement, we'll get, yeah, you'll get their Medicaid number, you'll get their birth date, you'll hopefully get their full name. Sometimes it takes a while to get all of that information. Hey, Jennifer Swan, everybody. We just finished up Icebreakers.
Awesome. Oh, it's your favorite.
I know. It's my favorite. So I'll introduce you to everybody. This is going to be my pop quiz. These are the coolies over here. They have 2 kiddos at home, right? Yes, they have 2 kiddos at home. They're here for foster care or adoption.
Awesome.
The Brandon Stool family. They are here for foster care. They have almost adult children at home. They decided to go for another try here.
You
so
wouldn't
that's
have
exciting.
thought.
I know.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's true. And then back here, the Walshes.
Hello.
They just moved here and decided that they needed to do foster care, so it's super exciting. They also have 2 kiddos at
Where'd you
home.
move from?
South Carolina.
Okay. Nice. Welcome to Colorado. How long have you been here?
Since July.
Okay.
Yeah. Love it.
And I'm Jennifer Swan. I'm the Director of Licensing. I've been with Hope and Home for over 7 years, in child welfare for about 11. Worked in all different areas of foster care and child welfare, but Hope and Home's the best, so got to stay here. So I review all of the families as they go through the licensing process and approve your family to get started, and then get you guys ready for the home study process, and then we review home studies. And so anyway, just love working with foster parents. They're my favorite people on earth, so welcome. All right.
Another thing you should know, it's both of their first classes. It's their last class.
Your last class, your first year. Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, we were just talking about your family's getting close to the home study.
If only a drop floor plan out.
That's all we need. Come on, man,
We're
let's
down
do
to
it.
that. Tax returns was I just sent to Steph when we walked in, and brought in floor plan.
All right.
Nice.
Almost
Very
there.
close. Okay, so let us pick up where you keep going.
Sure.
And I'll catch.
I was saying something as you just walked in. What was I saying? Oh, I was talking about emergency placements. So we'll talk more about this later, but we try to get as much information as we can when kids are placed. Sometimes for emergency placements, the information is not totally accurate and it's very limited. I can't even tell you how many times I've gotten calls for like a 3-year-old girl, and then it turns out it's a 2-year-old boy, and
Yes, it can be that bad.
Yes, these things happen. It's part of the process.
We've had, it's an African-American infant, and it was like a Caucasian redhead 3-year-old. Yeah.
But when you think about all the people who are involved in a removal, I mean, there's police involved, there's family, there's caseworkers. The information gets
And
complicated.
it's
a
also
lot
what
of the
people are
time.
reporting
Yes.
versus what
Yeah.
is actually the situation.
That is true.
So we'll hear what the report was, but they had reported false information sometimes. One question, do we have people online?
We have one family online.
So I'm wondering if we should scoot over a little?
Yeah.
Microphone's there, so. Here we go.
I need to stay hydrated. I'm getting choked up here.
Okay, me too.
Any other questions on icebreakers?
Before we stopped, earlier you said we're mandatory reporters, but we're not investigating. Is there a situation situation where we could be in court testifying as to what happened, simply, like I said, in our home, something like that?
Yes, it's pretty rare. The most often I've seen foster families asked to testify is during a termination hearing. If you're the adoptive family,
We would be the adopted.
yeah. So you might be asked to testify in that case.
But even in that case, it's rare.
Yeah, it's rare.
Very rare. Did you discuss how the child's testimony can be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. So we can go ahead and introduce your team members. You've already heard me talking about your home supervisor. That's your Hope and Home staff member. It's your first point of contact for support, questions, information, training. Your home supervisor is our primary means of supporting you. That also comes along with our support groups and a mentor family that will be assigned to you. But primarily, Hope and Home to you is your home supervisor. So we encourage you to really use them well. We're constantly training our home supervisors on, trauma, attachment, the legal system. So they're your expert when it comes to those things. They also want to be able to support you. It's not just a person who comes into your home and makes sure you have your paperwork done. They're human beings and they want to connect with you on that human level too. We know this is very, very challenging. We know this is an impossible task, and so we train our home supervisors to be empathetic and understanding and able to be kind of a friend to you in this process. They're a professional on some level, but they're also that supportive friend who understands, what's going on. So make sure you're using them. They can't support you if they don't know how to. So be in communication with them and make sure that they understand kind of what's going on in the home.
Yeah, when I was a home supervisor, I would tell my families, I've been married to my husband for, at that point, 6 years or 7 years, whatever. And sometimes we're still figuring out the best ways to communicate with each other and to support each other. You guys are going into this really hard journey, and the home supervisor is your support person, but everybody feels supported in different ways and likes to be communicated with in different ways. So the best that you can help them understand your best means of communication and ways you feel supported and things that you expect from them, then they can respond to that better, because they have, a caseload of 20-something families that they're supporting. So they just need a little bit of information from you guys on who you are and what is the best way to do that for you.
So then the next person is your caseworker. So your home supervisor's job is to support you as a family. Your caseworker's job is to work toward reunification. Your actual word here is the caseworker is working the case in order to find permanency for children through reunification, kinship, or adoption. And then that first fill in the blank is they are the main contact person for the biological family, and they facilitate the treatment plan. So we've had families, when they're really frustrated with the system, say, I feel like my caseworker is on mom's side or on dad's side, or things like that. And really, truthfully, your caseworker is on the biological family's side. They want to reunify the biological family. It's not really about taking one side or the other. That's what their job is to get kiddos home to family. So keep that in mind as you're navigating this process. Your home supervisor is there for you and for your foster family and make sure your kiddos' needs are being met. The caseworker has a totally different role in this process.
Is that a county employee then? Our case
Yes.
county?
Yep. They're employed by the county, and we place kiddos from all over the state of Colorado. Primarily, we're going to be doing El Paso County placements, but you might get a Denver County placement, you might get an Adams County. We're all over the place with where our kiddos come from. Primarily, you guys here in this room will be working with El Paso County caseworkers. The next one is the GAL. GAL stands for Guardian Ad Litem. This is the child's attorney, and the attorney is appointed by the court to represent their best interest. So the caseworker and GAL are going to be working together a lot. on the case in your home. The GAL is going to be representing what they feel are the kiddos' best interests. They're going to be arguing for various placements in court. Ideally, your caseworker and GAL will work together really well, and they usually do. It's pretty uncommon if they're totally on separate pages. It has happened, but typically your GAL is going to go into court and say, here's how my kiddo's doing, here's what I think they need, and then they'll work alongside the caseworker for the child. Any questions on that? Okay. And your GAL is probably only going to come to the home once every other month, maybe even once every 3 months. Your caseworker and home supervisor will be in the home monthly. And usually at the beginning of placements, home supervisors are a little bit more accessible. They might try to come out once or twice if that's something that you need. Sometimes it's like, I've had way too many appointments this month. If I could just have a little bit of peace, that would be great. But if you feel like you need somebody in your home more, we're able to do that as much as possible.
And the caseworker will typically come to your house every month, but they technically have to see the child every month, but it only has to be every other month in your home. We usually do it in your home, but they can do it elsewhere.
Yeah. A lot of times with older kids, they'll go to school. Maybe they'll sit with them at lunch, or they'll see them at a visit. They want to see kiddos in different environments too.
And you can schedule those appointments together. It won't necessarily always work out that way, but that's sometimes nice so that it's some less appointments. And then when you have the team there talking, you get more information. People have different pieces and different questions, and so it can be better understanding for everyone. So that's nice.
Yeah, if we can get all of your home visits on the same schedule, it's usually best for everybody.
Yes.
So it's hard for kiddos to have 4 different professionals in and out of the home at any given time. So if we can have just one visit a month they can look forward to, we'd love to do that. It doesn't always work out that way, but we try to get professionals communicating together and working together. Can I take over?
Sure. CASA is the court-appointed special advocate. The judge assigns CASA volunteers to difficult and complex cases involving physical or sexual abuse and neglect. So not every case has a CASA. And have you guys heard of CASA before? Yeah? Okay. So they typically would like to assign them to every case, but there's not always CASAs available for every case. So they're going to make sure to assign them on more difficult cases, kids that have gone through a lot of placement changes, if there's a lot of sexual abuse involved. And the CASA is another voice for the child in the courts. And they will see the child in every environment. So they'll see them in your home, in school, during visitation. If there's visits at home with the parents, they're going to try and get to know every single aspect of the case so that they can advocate for the child, knowing all of that.
You might have said this, but maybe not. So they usually do 2 visits a month, 2. Everybody else does 1. They try to see the child at least twice a month.
They're volunteers with CASA.
Yeah. So they go through an intensive training through
they
CASA.
advertise them quite a bit.
Yeah. Right. And they only have 1 case that they're working on. As opposed to these other team members that we've just been talking about, they have big caseloads. The CASA volunteer only has 1 case. Yeah. So they're solely concentrated on that.
When do they stop working on that case?
When it's over.
When the child gets reunified?
Yeah, so if
Right.
the case closes, a child could be reunified and the case remains open for some time. The CASA will stay on until they close the case. Or if a child is adopted, that's when the case closes and the CASA will exit the scene then. But have been times when families have developed really great relationships with their CASA, and that's an ongoing support for the family and for kids. So then we have your Visitation Supervisor. Their role is to coordinate and supervise visits between children and their biological family. And they record the interactions, which can then be used as a testimony in court. I believe visits still happen at Savio. Do you know if that's still happening?
Last I heard, they're still happening there.
Okay.
And the Visitation Center.
Yeah, so we have the Family Visitation Center downtown. We have Griffith Center. We also have Savio. Those are the three main places where your visits will be happening. Usually, as soon as a case opens, if a child is placed in foster care, they're ordered to have a visit within the first 24 hours of placement. So that first visit, you might get a phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday and be asked to go to a visit at 3 o'clock that day. That's because of a court order. They're in a time frame that they have to abide by. After that, the ongoing visit schedule, you'll know, okay, we always have our visits on Tuesdays at 5, or, Tuesdays and Thursdays at this time. So you'll be able to have an ongoing schedule, and you can work with your team in something that works with your schedule. But keep in mind, it's ordered for the family for their treatment plan, so they're going to be prioritizing the biological family's schedule over yours. Don't feel like you have zero say, though. If you are ordered to have a visit at 2 o'clock and everybody's working and your kids are at school, obviously that's not really going to work well for your family. So you can say, well, I can't do 2, but maybe I could do 4. Is that doable? Try to have a little bit of back and forth there.
Mm-hmm. It is something that becomes like an unexpected hardship for families down the road when you have taken on time slots that aren't the best for you. So it's really good to advocate for that up front, things that work. Keeping in mind that when you take these kids, you're actually agreeing with the courts that you'll get them to visitation. So it's something that you do need to make sure you're making accessible, but you want to take your schedule into consideration. But the first time they call you, it's going to be to set up a visit within like 48 business hours. So that one you need to be a little more flexible on, but when you get that ongoing schedule, you want to make sure you're...
I'm sorry, are those pretty consistent then, ahead of time?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so they'll try and set it up like if it's once a week, it'll be the same day, or twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
It's not going to be like weekly, you find out when your visit's going to be. You'll have a set visit schedule.
Right, and that's why it's important to make it work with your schedule, because,
So you're not getting something that sucks.
Exactly. And if something changes, you can of course say, oh man, now this got changed to this day, but the point is that you do need to make sure you have these visits for these kids, but you want to advocate for yourself as well.
These movies, I have a lot of questions I'm not asking them when they get another class, but are we supposed to provide visitation for anybody else other than the parents of these kids? I mean, grandparents or older siblings? I mean, how does that, we're going to learn about that, I assume?
It could be possible.
Yeah, it depends on the case. A lot of times we have extended family that wants to be involved as a support for kiddos. Usually those visits aren't a court order. It's something that you can schedule with the family that works for everybody. If we have sibling groups and we can't get all of them placed together, they'll sometimes order sibling visits, but usually that's between the various foster families to try to get kiddos together regularly.
Are any of these visits going to be happening at our house?
No. Well, with the exception of if you do sibling visits and maybe you have another Hope and Home family that has siblings and you want to have them over for dinner, or you have developed a great relationship with bio grandma. She's a totally safe person. She's just not able to be mom. She wants to be grandma. That would be something that you could schedule on your own if you're comfortable with that.
And the team has given approval.
Yes. Yeah.
Already.
Also that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so important.
Yeah.
Just like a good key to everything is if you're communicating with your home supervisor and your team, then we'd be able to know what's going on and help direct you on the right ways to handle the situation. That's why your home supervisor is so valuable, because they'll advocate for you, they'll help direct you, they know this is coming. Yeah.
Your home supervisor has seen countless different cases, and they've seen all of the ways a case can go, and they've seen the behaviors, they've seen the needs, so use them. They really do have a wealth of knowledge that can be helpful for you guys. But that's not picking up on the microphone. Sorry for my vibration on my phone, everybody. So then the next person is your therapist. Most of our kiddos who come into care are going to have some form of therapy, whether that's occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. or maybe play therapy, or if you've got older kiddos, they might be doing, one-on-one, more traditional talk therapy. That's pretty much part of this process. And therapy allows kiddos to work through their trauma, work on problematic behaviors, feelings, relationship issues, or somatic responses, sensations in the body. We're not going to go into too much detail on what that looks like. You'll have lots of different classes on trauma and how that plays out in kiddos. Just be aware there's probably going to be some kind of therapy in your future. We also have put in referrals for family preservation workers, which is basically an in-home therapist. Oh, that's kind of our next thing. So if you've got a really challenging placement and you really want to make it work in your home, we might put in some in-home services to see if maybe just getting a little bit of extra support, maybe some more eyes in the home, some more hands in the home, that could help. So there are some in-home therapies too that we could advocate for.
As far as therapists go, it's really important for you guys to remember that you're the children's advocate. You're going to be the one that have the kids in your home, and you see all sorts of behaviors that they're having, or maybe they're developmentally behind, or maybe they're not able to eat the way the child their age should eat. So you advocate for those things so that then we can get the therapies in place, because the team might not know, but you can see what the children are dealing with and advocate for those therapies. Might add a few extra appointments. Some of those things can happen in your home as well. Some of the therapists can do services in the home.
So through therapy, individuals can improve self-destructive behaviors and habits, resolve painful feelings, improve relationships, and more. That point always makes me like...
We kind of need to work on that.
If you call in the next 30 minutes, next class will change that. Maybe.
Yeah.
What else should I say about therapy? I would also be communicating with your home supervisor about any, if you're seeing behaviors that you don't know what to do with, if you're seeing things that you know are concerning. People who've parented before, what's normal development and what's not. So you can be talking to your home supervisor like, I never saw this before with any of my kiddos. Should I be concerned about this? And they can help you decide, maybe we should maybe get another opinion. Or I've seen this therapy work really well in this situation. They can help navigate that process for you. It's also important to keep in mind there are a lot of therapists in this town. Not all of them are really exceptional.
No.
So if you, I know, shocker. So if you are working with a therapist and you feel like they're giving you advice that feels weird, that doesn't go along with your training here at Hope and Home, be talking to us about that, because there's a lot of opinions on what works and what doesn't. We know what works here with our kids, and there's a reason why we train you the way that we do. So if you're getting conflicting information, always be talking about that with us so we can make sure you're getting really good information, really good support. There's nothing more frustrating than feeling like you're getting 14 different opinions from all these different professionals in your life. So just allow us to kind of streamline that for you.
Is that decided by the county again, who the therapists are? Is that how that works?
Sometimes a kiddo will come into care already with a therapist. If at all possible, we'll suggest therapists who we trust and have worked with before and try to get kiddos in with the experts that we know in the community.
But we make the appointments and we handle the logistics of it.
Yep.
You guys will get the suggestions of where to go.
Yep.
Somebody go to the county.
Yeah.
And a life skill worker who she kind of touched on, but she talked about a family preservationist. Those would be the people that are working in your home with you if you needed some extra help with behaviors. Life skills workers are often working with the biological family to help achieve goals on their treatment plan. So it's just another person that might be in the child's life, but they would be working with them in the child's and the biological family.
Sometimes with older kiddos, older teens who are getting ready to emancipate rather than be adopted, they may also have a life skills worker helping them, apply for jobs or learn how to balance a budget, those types of things. We would hope that that's all happening in your home already, just as being a part of a family. But some older kiddos will have that as part of their treatment plan as well.
All right, so we take a break here. So we'll take a 10-15 minute break. 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All
Get
right.
more pizza.
Get more pizza, go to the bathroom. I'll just leave that.
And I'm not going to be here after your break. I have to go to school now.
Just
so.
kidding.
I'll be,
Thank you.
right back.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you guys. I'm sure I'll see you all again at some point. You'll hear from me in the middle of the night asking for a placement.
That you would. See, you guys were from Oregon before?
Yeah.
Oh, 6 years? Where about? Started in Tillamook?
On the coast?
When I was a kid, I lived outside of Medford.
Oh, yeah. Southern Oregon.
Somewhere out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a nice spot down there, actually. You were on the dry side.
It was 40 acres.
Nice.
Bordered on a lake somewhere. Had an outhouse, actually lived with an outhouse. Yeah, raccoons would come and play with our Tonka trucks in the middle of the night. Cool. Big one-room cabin.
Yeah. That's beautiful country there.
Yeah. It was a drag getting in and out. The road had always flooded out. I was in kindergarten, and the school didn't have kindergarten. They started at first grade, so I just stayed at home with my mom. Great.
We lived in Tillamook, and they make cheese, and then we moved to Newburgh where they make wine.
Nice.
Wine.
We
all
only
ag-
stayed together.
It was all agriculture.
Walk across the street.
That's
to the
Oregon,
wine
that's
tasting.
all.
I
Yeah.
was like, I need wine.
Grassy
Hey, that's awesome.
Two of my favorite
And they
things.
have
There you go.
these tours, and all the people from Portland would come out, smelling their wine. Yeah, they're just, the people who have the grapes are just farmers. You know, They used to be, what are they used to? Anything.
There's those
Yeah.
farmers that went from grass seed to grapes
That's
because it
grass,
paid better.
yeah. And,
Grass seed is
the guy
on the
that sells the
downslope
beer
and the
cans.
grapes were going up in value, so
Right, they
all
bought
the
into
grass
it.
seed fields became vineyards.
Vineyards.
They
Awesome.
were just sharp old boys, farmer.
They know how to make money off their land.
Yep.
And then we had neighbors who, one just had a couple acres, but the mom lived down the road that had 100 plus. But they didn't want to make that much wine, so they would sell to the guy in between them. So, same grapes, their bottle of wine was, it was high, low $30, 20 and change. This guy was over 100. So we go to these little progressive dinners and everyone's like, cheaper wine than, you know. So then someone finally asked the expensive wine guy. And that's what he said. He said, it's just marketing. That's all. I spent overtime marketing. That's, you know, same grapes. I don't know what to tell you. So. But
Did you guys come here for work?
Yeah, we were heavy equipment contractors, and then he bought a rock yard here. And so, or recycling. We would take in concrete and crush it and resell it. So, like Waldo Canyon Fire, that was here, Mountain Shadows, there's over 300 houses that burned. Those foundations were compromised because it was so hot. So they had to get rid of the foundation. So we took in the foundation. And, well, they'd bring it to our yard.
Okay.
And then it just so happened the next year they expanded I-25. We needed road base. So we crush it and then we take the metal and clean it and sell it as road base. So all those foundations that
Are now
burned
the road.
are now the road on I-25.
Well, small part.
Part of it, not all,
Right, right.
but,
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
Very small
Well,
part.
it's not, I mean, it's other concrete too.
Sure,
but
sure.
Gives you an idea of what we can
Okay.
do.
But you guys are not doing that anyway.
No, we
Sold
sold
that
that.
to a bigger company,
Okay.
wanted to own it better work we did, so we sold it to them. They wanted a lot more than I did, so they owned it.
Okay.
Yeah, we sold that.
Nothing.
When you retired? Or
No,
are you doing a
we have a
little side
wastewater
project?
treatment facility in Denver.
Okay.
Now we recycle dirty water.
I'm a licensed wastewater treatment plant operator.
Are you?
Yeah.
Very cool.
I've been doing it like 27 years. I had I'm in HVAC, but years ago, I was the head of maintenance at a small casino out 100 miles from Vegas in the desert. We had a 4-pond aerated, one aerated pond, 4 evaporative, and a lift station with 2 pumps. But somebody had to have a license. Yeah, certified waste treatment plant operator. I know, Bruce, man, I tell you what.
Yeah, ours is oil and heavy metals.
That's a lot better than waste.
It doesn't have the aroma.
Yeah.
Organics have. But I grew up playing sewer,
Yeah.
so I know all about it. I'm gonna build a pump station, gas
It's
stations.
the smell of money, is what we use.
Yeah.
It's the smell of money.
Tillamook, they
Doesn't
used
bother
to.
me. Yeah. I've been in
Go
that
to
stuff
Cheese
since I
Way.
was
Okay.
I guess before it
Yeah.
was
I
good,
did
but all
a
it,
lift station, there's a
it smells like
municipal
dead
lift station
animals, and so they would,
in Denver.
Tillamook, they
where
sprayed
it
it
was
around the field.
400 condos,
But behind
townhomes,
our house.
that were, the road was
Oh, and
the
If the
county
wind
line.
went a certain way, which
This
it
county
normally
was like,
did,
no,
it's
you
totally
can't
fine,
pump
they
it
don't
out.
even know.
Right.
But if it doesn't,
they had
or
a
if
lift
it's
station that
stagnant
was so
for a couple
old
days, or if it didn't
that,
rain.
and it pumped up the hill in this county.
Total
It was so old, it was before the standardization of
Yeah.
pipe.
That's tough to ignore.
So a 4-inch
Right,
check valve
right.
is 13 inches.
Put a damper on
A
everything.
4-inch check valve is
And
11
they
and
do
a half
it-
inches, and I had a
The
13-inch
cheese way
4-inch
was
check valve.
once, maybe twice a year, so it
Right,
wasn't
fine.
a lot.
They wouldn't
But,
believe me, that was 4
they were
inches, and the
that-
plumbing guys were like,
We
no.
weren't by the
I mean, you
door.
didn't grow up.
That's how old it was. If I
Yeah.
wasn't standard. Yeah, left that lazy.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Just a little bit
Yeah,
outside
so
of
the
Chicago.
machine
Oh,
shop
where?
would make me donuts,
Darien?
you know.
Oh, okay.
Downers Grove.
Yeah, I know Downers Grove.
Yeah.
I used to live in
But it
Oak
had
Park,
a-
Oh, yeah,
Western,
okay.
and
We
then
never
I
knew
lived a little
that.
bit closer to the
Until
city.
later,
I was
it
in
was about the size of a city bus.
Park
Cavern
University.
out
What is that?
in the
Liberty
grass
Park?
out in the field
No, that's not.
for emergency
Oh,
overflow.
it's closer to the city.
Well, then
You just
it
keep
failed
going up
so
Park
much
Street.
that that was full.
About 4 or
When
5
we
miles
finally
outside
found
the
that,
city.
we're like,
That's where I lived.
let's pump this out.
It was fun.
I got
But
an
it was
idea.
also
Let's pump
really
this out.
cold.
Yeah.
We built
It's like a wet, damp
It's-
cold.
yeah.
It
a
just
pneumatic
gets in your
system for it
bones.
to have a pressure transducer
Here.
that would
Even coming from
blow
Oregon,
bubbles into the bottom of the
you
pit.
can't get warm.
And based on, based on the
It's damp.
pressure, the back
Here, it's
pressure on
like,
the
I'm
tube,
freezing. Oh, wait, no,
and
more.
how deep the
Yeah, it's
water
like a
was.
switch of a button.
Yeah.
Foot head of water is all it is.
He's
right?
from,
So
he's from Sandy, Utah.
that's how we
and,
turn the pumps on
coming
and
from,
off. They used to have those
Chicago, I lived
mercury
in
floats,
Boston,
and
so I'm
they
so
put
used to
in
this
the
heavy,
left. Oh, the mess.
thick,
Wet.
wet
Yeah.
snow, and then I moved to Salt Lake City, and
Yeah.
literally
Yeah,
with
they
my
get
arm,
tangled
it
up.
whoosh off the windshield, and it was all gone.
Sweep your driveway.
God, you're kidding me, that's so easy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
for,
Yeah,
I had to
for
like
a
get
company
up
called Train.
45 minutes earlier just
Sure
to.
you
I
better.
should
Well,
love
my
my
car.
car.
Yeah, small shot.
Yeah.
I left the field about
And I
5
think
years
I'm
ago
going
on a service manager now, so I manage
Mostly
a
around
team of 12
Portland.
guys.
Okay. Yeah.
It goes for all of them.
Cornelius.
Yeah, more or less, yeah. I'm mostly financial. I go out and buy lunch.
Toward Eugene.
Yeah, I don't even, I don't get my tools out
When we
anymore.
lived
Campus.
Campus Health, bought our first, my first motorcycle there.
It's
Really?
hard to find
I have
quality
a dirt bike, but.
Oh, okay.
um,
Beautiful. my
And
guys,
we were on the
senior
country.
guys, like,
Here we're in a
27
subdivision.
years of training.
When we moved here, our kids were fifth grade and a
I've
freshman.
got a couple.
And they thought they died when
It's
they had
like-
kids. They had friends,
I mean,
everything's
a
so
lot of
close,
kids,
just like, oh my gosh.
Almost everybody I've got.
Where before, we were out in the country and it was, it was an event to have, most of the time, the kids would just come for the weekend and stay. But we were 13 miles.
They made it so easy to go to
When we
college.
lived in
Tell
Newburgh,
everybody this way.
we're 13 miles from town. But we also were just right over the hill from Hillsborough. There was a little mountain in front of us. And that, you just went over and you were there and then, so, but they just thought this was the best.
And you guys are like, I need the space.
Yeah.
This is the space.
Well,
So,
you see
but
the
it
pictures
is,
too,
so
and
it's just more like that. I could go from the house to the grocery store, to school. The grocery store, I hit one stoplight.
It's crazy that
And
you encourage people
school.
to do that when they look down on it. I don't understand.
No, it's just what they're taught, you know, everybody thinks they want to be a civil engineer, they stand by water.
And it was beautiful. It was either grapes, grassy, or we do a lot of landscaping. So there was that, or so something was in bloom all the time, so it was really pretty. So, but it's gorgeous here. I love the mountains, I love hiking in a different way.
Air pressure on a water tank.
We saw 27.2.
Yeah, it never went that.
It doesn't rain.
No,
Well,
it's-
not very often.
Yeah.
But my kids miss it, they'll say.
No, they'll come back. It always.
It'd be interesting if they go back.
Yeah,
It's
what
so
they
easy to
choose
go
to
to
do.
college.
They were old enough.
Make it hard.
Their memory of childhood was
College,
like, your son especially.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting if
More
you go
respect.
back.
Yeah, and he's already set up for us too. But we'll see.
Right.
Well, you said, you said he's Marines.
He's a Marine reservist, and, yeah. So, and he was offered,
Financial services
he
on the
wants to
side.
fly, that's why
Trying
he
to turn,
went.
switch.
And so,
HVAC.
Oh, you're going
he
completely
has his
different.
bachelor's.
You couldn't want to work
And
there.
they offered him
Completely
a
retired.
contract, but
And,
so many staff,
I do
so he
like
got to
that
keep it
financial
improved over.
coaching.
He wants to fly helicopters, and then he wants to go.
I'm working on my investment book.
After it's 10 years.
And so I meet people and I say,
We have a good friend that's a
talk
black
about the finances.
Okay,
Yeah.
just got out.
He just got out and now he's
$70,000.
starting the path for commercial airlines and
$400 or
stuff.
$500 a month.
Yeah, he had, how many tours?
10 years in the workforce.
There were long ones, huge arms.
Yeah, and it was at the height of
What they've done,
9/11.
learn how to put pipe together.
He saw a few people like that.
Oh, yeah. Any quality tradesman.
But you know, I think it takes a certain kind of
Yeah,
person.
There's no, I mean, there's no college debt.
He knows how to
Yeah,
compartmentalize
it's all
it.
cash, man. That's what, me, I was a high
And I've
school
seen it
dropout.
already.
And
They'll go to his
I
reserve.
did like low budget general contracting work with people for a
I
while.
almost feel like they've
Until,
got
I was working
They,
with this
they do,
girl.
they, or they
Because
don't.
I was
if they
saying
internalize
HVAC.
that, exactly.
They don't.
James Cowan.
So I
I
slowly.
was still in Cal one day and I
got
had to get out of
back.
here. And I said, I'm moving to Montana.
And,
I bet if you brought your, if you went and got EPA certified, the boss would give you a job. All right, you went and got EPA certified like the next week. I did, like, resume and all that stuff. Guys just threw it on the desk, he's like, did you work for $9 an hour? Yeah, I would. That's where it all started.
Say that out loud.
Great attorney. They moved us to San Francisco, they moved us to Mountain. Go anywhere, do anything.
But he's really a Marine. so we don't-
No,
Yeah,
don't
they
just
don't
get
have to
into it.
this weekend.
Gonna stroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure is. But this is your guys' pen?
I think
No.
so, this is ours.
This is the place to go to get your fingerprints. This is the lady.
Or the magnet. It's
Oh.
a dollar cheaper than the police
Dollar
department,
cheaper.
but time's a little more available than finding out when the police department's
Open
gonna
9
be
to
there.
5.
Okay.
Get the address off that.
Yeah.
These guys make.
She's great. She's an old school shipping shop.
But she was lovely.
And she's got candy on the counter.
Well, there you go. Oh, there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be transparent with you guys because because I'm having a rough night, and I feel like that's nice. My friend has a child who has had 3 surgeries for brain tumor, and they just had to rush him to. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
And there's nothing I can do, so I'm just going to be here and teach, but I'm like
Yeah,
kind of a wreck.
yeah.
And I'm not normally like this. We're normally like this class is kind of fun. But you guys don't get the fun class, sorry.
You don't need to
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I need to take a break.
Well, yeah, and so she might be texting me and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
it's okay. Everything needs to
okay, so I just thought it's better to say what's up than just be like a freak. He's 1.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, he's had the tumor removed. He's in chemo. He's just like last week was his 5th round, and but she said that he's seizing and changing colors and his oxygen's dropping. So she took him to Memorial, and Memorial's right now they're in the ambulance being transported up to Children's. So so I was like, because she's by herself, her husband has their other kid, and I'm like, do you want me to come? I'll come. So she says, yeah, come, bye.
Okay, what's his name?
Yeah, what's
Can we
the
just
child's
pray?
name?
Yeah, let's pray that.
Can we do that? Okay, what's his name?
Henry.
Okay. Father, you are sovereign. God, you know Henry, and you know his mama, and you know his daddy. You've numbered his days there. Can you acknowledge that? And I pray for the ambulance driver right now as they're getting into Children's, and I thank you that there are such experts out there who know how to care for these kiddos, and we pray that that ambulance would get there faster than anybody anticipated in full safety. God, that your hedge of protection would be over everybody in this situation. God, Henry is yours, and you knit him together and you formed him in your image, Lord, and I thank you for that. God, I pray for peace right now. I pray, Lord, that even in this room, as we acknowledge that really crappy things happen on this earth, that God, you are bigger than that, and that this is not our home. So God, right now, I just ask that you would be covering for Henry and his family. As so many are just concerned for him, and we pray that you would just go before, that divine appointments would already begin. God, that you would calm his body and the responses he's having, and just settle his body as he's in the ambulance and give him the rest that he needs. Father, we love you and we thank you for your sovereignty. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I'm going to tell her that our class just prayed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prayer. Thank you.
You pray so beautifully. You're so pretty.
Daddy's got to go check on our kids now.
Alrighty. So, next, we're talking about the 12 steps of the legal process. Actually, I'll wait for him to come back soon.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Oh, yeah. No biggie. So did you guys do your mandatory reporter already? Anybody else? I assume not, because you guys
I
are.
started to, but it wouldn't let me get past.
Close it and open it again.
Oh,
We
okay.
both have to do it. And then it
Changed
opens.
emails and,
You switch to Google Chrome.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It works
your
better on
browser.
Chrome. It worked fine for me on Internet Explorer, but you could try Chrome. It says
Okay.
that it'll work better on Chrome.
And I did Safari initially, it wouldn't let me, and then when I opened it the second time, it was fine.
Okay.
The whole way through, so, yeah, just open
It was
it.
a little glitchy the whole way through. I'm used to antiquated software. So.
All right, so the 12 steps of the legal process. So first, a report is made. Not every report is investigated. About half of the referrals are screened out. That means they didn't meet the statutory definition of child abuse and neglect, and so they're screened out before they're even assessed. And you guys want to give a guess on how many calls are made each month in El Paso County?
Each month.
Half is screened out.
400 kids pulled out of their families.
It's 16,000 calls per day.
16,000 calls
A year.
a year.
The state was 16,000.
1,200 calls per month.
Yes.
Good job doing your
Yeah.
math. 1,200 divided by 400.
It is 12 100 calls a month, and half of those are automatically screened out. So then they will investigate 600.
And of those 600, 400 kids get pulled out?
400
No,
kids.
this
a year.
is sad.
400
Saturday.
calls per year ending a child leaving a family, right? Is that right?
In this county alone,
Yeah.
16,000 calls
Roughly.
are made each year, but only 400 kids are generally placed. So the really bad cases are placed.
That's in Core 3.
Yes.
And that's in this county though, right?
That's this
so
county.
So
Right.
you're talking-
16,000, but I thought it was up to statewide, that's the county, 16,000?
Yes,
county.
that's the
Only
county.
400 end up resulting in a.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little higher than 400 now, but it's around there. Yeah. So, what happens when they do assess the case, there's an investigation, and so the investigator will go out and will either find the case unfounded, inconclusive, meaning there's not enough information, or founded. The investigations, so half of those reports are investigated by people who, the public call. But I need to take this time to tell you that when a call is made on a foster family, 100% of those calls are investigated.
Probably should be.
What?
Probably should be.
Well, yeah, and they have to. The county has to investigate if a report is made on one of your homes. And sometimes, most of the time, those calls might be made from the biological family
That's what I was just going to say.
who, oh, I saw a bruise, I think they're beating them, sort of thing. So 99% of those calls are, false. There's nothing. We ask you guys to fill out incident reports. So if there are bruises or things that happen, then we can say, oh, we already know. Child fell, hit their head on the coffee table or whatever. We already know what that bruise is from. That's why these incident reports are really important. But they will be investigated, so we want you guys to understand that's normal. It's not like we're going to be like, oh my gosh, this family's being investigated. This is something that happens. And also Hope and Home will be with you guys through that process. We'll walk through that with you. So if they're going to send an investigator out to your home, we'll send somebody out to your home as well to be there to walk through that process. I've been present for several. One was like, oh, poor lady was doing respite. So she had 2 biological children, 2 adopted children. She was pregnant, and then she did respite for another. Okay. And she had taken all those kids to the park. And when they got to the park, there were 2 little ones in the stroller. So she, undid the 2-year-old ran out, and then she was getting the little baby out, and that 2-year-old just ran up the playground and fell right off, and he shattered his leg. So they had to go to the emergency room right away. She had all these kids to go to the emergency room. We knew they were going to send an investigator out, so we've sent 4 staff from Hope and Home with food to the emergency room so we could take care of the kids, watch the kids, feed the kids, be with them while they're investigating, go be with the kid back in the room. So we're not going to leave you guys to deal with those things by yourself. And that's why it's also so important, again, you're communicating. We need to be one of those first calls. You're calling the ambulance or calling us so that we can be there as reinforcements to help take care of all these situations. And then they do an investigation, all the kids say, yes, what happened, and then it's unfounded. But investigations have to happen when incidents occur. I do also like to take this moment to point out that there has been the rare circumstance where the foster parent actually did do something. So we have one example where foster mom usually was the one in contact with the home supervisor. Sometimes it's dad, just for the record, but in this case it was mom. But this time, Dad called and said, I need to make a report. My wife slapped a foster child and left a bruise on her face, a 7-year-old child. And so we have to call that in. We're all mandatory reporters. We have to call that into the hotline, and of course they're going to come investigate. And she was found guilty. She received a misdemeanor charge. We had to close her license and move the child from her home because she assaulted that child. She ended up doing some community service, and then that case was closed. Of course, she can't be a foster parent anymore. But I like to point out that she had biological children, and her kids were never at risk of being removed. Sometimes people get worried, oh, if a bunch of reports are made on me, like the bio parents are calling in all these false reports, are we going to be, like, lose our children? Are we going to be investigated for that? And here was a case that foster mom actually did commit that abuse, but her kids weren't at risk of being moved. But had that woman taken some time to de-escalate herself, that wouldn't have happened. People lose their temper. She made a terrible choice in the midst of losing her temper, and that child's life and her life and many lives were, under upheaval because of it. So I like to make sure we all go around and kind of think about and talk about what your de-escalation techniques are. I have had to use it a lot lately, like with this little buddy, Henry, and just different things in life. When I get frustrated and angry, I can feel my emotions escalating, and through different things and just training and whatnot, I have come up with what keeps me calm, and so I'm going to share it with you. I did it out there before I came back in here because I've got this message about Henry, and I was very upset. And I tap, and I deep breathe, and I think of a happy place. Okay, all these things you might have heard. My happy place is pretty cool. It's the Garden of the Gods. I'm like on a blanket in the Garden of the Gods. Nobody else is there, but it's surrounded by the ocean. Because they're not the best. And I tap, and I take deep breaths, and I say, God is with me. And I breathe. Deep breathing is a technique that they've used forever because it actually helps. And I do that, and I literally can feel it go, okay, I can calm down. And I actually went to a wellness doctor, like a naturopath doctor or whatever, in Woodland Park. That's where I live. And they try and teach you de-escalation stuff there, but I had already, had this whole thing under my belt. So they actually hook you to a computer, and they tell you to think of something that makes you angry. And I thought of foster care kids being abused, and you could see on the screen your emotions. And then they said, now think of something that makes you happy or calms you down. And I did my whole thing, and it went smooth. And she says the fastest she's ever seen it change. Wow. So that was cool for me to get to see, like, you can actually see it working. And these kids are coming with a lot of trauma and a lot of issues, and just not even kids, but people and kids in life, it can get to you, and these kids are going to come in, they're going to know how to work on pressing some of those buttons. And the best thing that you can do, I think the best parenting advice in general, is to keep yourself controlled so that you can teach them self-control. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to talk about, and it's good to have a partner. Like my husband was like, go take some breaths, go tap. And I'll go do that. My kids are like, Mom, don't tap. And I'm like, oh, you want me to? So anyway, just take a few minutes and think about what you're going to do so that you guys know how to help each other and you know how to help yourself in those minutes, so you don't end up like that lady slapping a foster kid.
Mom needs some responses. Sometimes I look at that, you could break me. Probably help. Look at the oils. That's what I do. Get the lavender.
I use oils too.
I'll just wait till you hear the classes on this stuff.
They do. They do.
He says they don't work.
I'll put certain oils on depending on. I think you need a little of this.
I just always say, would you like some of my hippie remedy? And sometimes he's like, okay, and other times he's like, no.
By hippie remedy, she means oils.
She needs oils too.
Oh, look at that.
I'm
gonna do some. Whatever.
The other thing is, they were the same company, and then they came up in Upward together, and they branched off. They reconciled, but then doTERRA became doTERRA.
Okay.
And Young Living became Young Living. But no, I'm a.
Peppermint.
Oh, you're just going direct, huh?
Yep, I feel a headache. So too much stress.
So very similar, and since I prefer them because they have more blends. They have more blends.
Who do you like?
Young Living.
Okay.
Because they have more blends than doTERRA does. But
They don't have Bayla.
Really through packaging.
She's got hers right there.
It's
You don't
because
need to
I-
breathe. You've got tranquil, deep relief, and stress away.
See?
Oh,
I didn't even-
I need some stress away.
I know.
Truly all in there.
Are you into the oils?
Which one is it?
Margarine.
It's one that I'm like,
I like
I do
smelling
this
them.
one,
I
which
know
is
they
still
do.
like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
60.
A couple for
They're
our
all
daughter.
light,
She's,
yeah. They're truly oil.
It smells great. She likes wearing it. It's her perfume.
Calls it a perfume, yeah.
How old is this one?
She's 4. She was diagnosed when she was 2. Hey, anything that works, we will use it. That's
I'm
awesome.
not knowing anything about it. Is that insulin dependent?
It's type 1 is insulin, and then it's it has nothing to do with diet or. Type 2 is insulin resistance. Type 1 is she literally does not produce insulin. So, yeah.
Insulin shots every month.
All right. So please share. I showed you, but I do. You show or tell us.
I have to come up with one. I
Yeah.
always just, when my kids are older, it's like, go to your room,
Mm.
give me some space, but.
Yeah.
Give me a piece of the car.
Yeah, go for a drive. But years ago, I'd make them go outside, I'm like, go dig a ditch, go outside and get out of my space.
Dig.
Yeah, but,
Physical exertion. Pull-ups for dig.
and if I try to pull up, I'd get more frustrated. But I think all of the ones, I think I'm gonna have to come up with something, and, I don't really have a lot of stress now,
You will.
so.
Apparently.
Yeah, so, I think I just have to.
Did you said you don't have a lot of stress now? So did you learn how to cope with that stress in some way before? And like re-engage
Our
those?
kids, they're not perfect, but they were pretty, when they were easy. I think we spent so much time outside. We used to live in the country, so, we rarely watched TV. And so it was just, I think, burning off that extra energy as children.
Mhm.
It just,
That is
not that I
huge.
planned it, but it just
I only need to tap on days we haven't been outside.
Yeah.
Truly.
But they would go and explore. So I definitely have to come up with something.
Yeah.
But I think, a little of everything I'll definitely use. The breathing, I'll, learn how to do that. And the oils, definitely.
Mhm.
I think those make a huge difference. I know, and I get those things cranking it, I feel like my kids are cranky.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I think this is physical exertion, and I'm going to have to breathe and have oils. And just come up with my own plan. But I don't work, so I don't have to, I won't have some of those stresses that I think some of the other people will, so I'll have a lot more time. Not to say that it won't happen, but, I think I'll have to relearn how to deal with, I'm sure, with kids that, need a little bit more attention than mine do. So,
Mhm. Or maybe a lot.
a lot, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. They're processing a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Was one of you a therapist?
My mother was.
Okay. Maybe it was a different class. Okay. It's obviously not this class. Okay. I was just going to say, ask them to chime in, whichever one. Anyway, okay, but yeah, so you'll. It's nice that you're a low stress person anyway.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's great place to like baseline. If your baseline is down here,
Yeah.
you know, when people have had more stress or different things in their life, you know, their baseline's up here. That's what happens to the kids. Their baseline is up here. So if a little thing happens to them, I mean, it's off the charts right away. Whereas if you have low stress and something happens, it's like, okay, you can deal with that, whatever. So that's a benefit to start kind of
Right.
being low stress.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
But when you're also not used to the stress, you're going to have ways to cope. So just to be aware. So you'll get some physical exertion to help you out.
Yeah.
Okay, over here.
I also don't have one. Sometimes I'm like, I just need 2 minutes. I'm a
Mhm.
reactionary person,
Mhm.
control freak.
Mhm.
So, I mean, daily with my own kids, it's just kind of asking God to grow me to be responsive, and that's kind of just where I live in this parenting of littles is how can I respond to you? I'm much more gracious to children that are not my own,
Mhm.
which is funny. You know, I was a children's director for years, a teacher, I direct an LCC, very gracious to other people's kids, but to my own, I have a very high standard, and so
Mhm.
I'm just learning and growing through that. And so as I'm doing that, learning to respond rather than react. Oils are beneficial. Music is sometimes beneficial. Just
Yeah.
stepping out of the room. You know, sometimes it's putting a podcast on and saying, hey guys, look at a book. I'm going to be back in 15 minutes, and just kind of filling my own tank
Yeah.
and just reminding myself of that. So those are some of the things that I do. I homeschool, so I'm with my kiddos 24/7. And so a lot of that is finding that too, so that we live in peace. And
Right.
it's not crazy chaos in our home at all times. You
Mhm.
know? So
Yeah.
physical would probably be really good for me if I would be self-controlled in that, to just have that outlet to say, okay, mom is feeling better because that exertion came here.
Right.
So all those are very helpful.
Mhm. And you?
I don't really have a good one. Only every once in a while that I get stressed about it. You know, I'm learning, like, one of the things that I'm talking about with friends is how to love and nurture. Have you families heard this yet? It's coming. How to love and nurture rather than I grew up. I was just talking to my dad about this yesterday. I grew up in a
Love and logic.
love and logic kind of family where
Mhm.
you natural consequences is what happens. Trying to figure out how to keep myself calm. Like yesterday, my son was very tired on the way home, and he just decided he was going to cry for an hour in the car. And it's like, how do I get this situation under control without ripping him out of the car and beating on him? And so then I decided it was a good time for him to have something to eat. So I was like, here, let me just peel this clem for you. And so normally, when I'm stressed out, I just want to go away. So I was trapped in the car with the whole family, and I couldn't. Normally, I just go out into the garage.
Mhm.
I like to work with my hands. You know, like you talked about physical exertion. I like to make or fix. And so I'll just go and be by myself for a little while, but I can't always do that. So I have to work on that.
Yeah, it is hard when you can't get it. That's why the breathing is so good, because you could do it anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's why I show you guys my thing, because you know, you might just be like, man, I'm trapped in the car, I don't know what to do. And you just think of me. And then think of the garden of the gods.
Yeah.
Just keep thinking of me. Just think of the garden of the gods surrounded by the ocean. Right.
There's a perfect world.
Yeah. But I would even recommend practicing taking deep breaths. Like today, it was Jana actually. She was stressed about a placement change that was having to happen, and she was like, oh, I was like, take a deep breath. She goes, oh, I'm so stressed. I'm like, that's not deep breathing. You know, so practicing that is actually good. I would recommend it. You guys.
Similar, like I don't really have anything that I have been doing, but I'm inspired by how your thing is it's so routinized. It's the exact same thing, it's the exact same way every time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, when you were talking, I pictured myself looking at a tree or something. I'm like these guys. I'm pretty mellow generally. I don't get ruffled easily. But I know that when I do get ruffled, it's because I haven't worked out that day or I haven't been outside that day. Those are definitely like big factors that will play into me getting anxious. And I think in moments of acute stress, I don't really have anything to bring me down. I'm kind of like a go into the room, go outside, get out of the situation type of person. Yeah, so I'm sort of thinking about how to put together my own little like mini routine of what to do, some push-ups to do, or
Yeah.
retreat.
Tell you at Walmart, right? You gotta get doing push-ups in the aisle.
In the aisle 12.
Yeah.
Well-
Your kid is screaming.
I say it's better to do some push-ups in Walmart than slap a kid. So, I mean, literally, like, you just never know you don't quite know what's going to get rattled up in you or what triggers they're going to push. So, if push-ups are the thing that comes to mind instead of something else, do them. It's a weird thing. Way weirder things have happened in Walmart.
You'll be on the people of Walmart video.
Yeah.
Just doing push-ups.
Better to be on a People Walmart video than...
Yeah, then America's Most Wanted.
Right.
So.
Same story. I'm glad that you brought it up because I think now we're on the way home. We're probably going to start brainstorming about what we need to do because it's going to be essential. I think it's an important tool to have in your arsenal. What occurred to me is, I've always been like a go for a walk, get out of the situation. But something more immediate that I just thought of that I want to try is singing my favorite hymn in the hymn. One of my favorites is "Be Thou My Vision." It's a beautiful melody, it's calming, and it also invites the spirit. So I can just immediately check in with, okay, this is not who I am. What I'm feeling right now, that's not who I am. I know who I am, and I know whose I am. And I need to just tune back into that. And if I can have his influence take over, then hopefully that will help dispel
Absolutely.
that feeling of urgent anger.
Yep. That's awesome.
So hymns, music.
That's
is
cool.
powerful.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So back on our 12-step process here. So an investigation happens in the biological family's home. It's either unfounded, inconclusive, or founded. If it's founded, two things can happen. They can open a case and do in-home services. So the child stays in their home. They're not removed, but there's enough concern, so services are provided. So if that happens, and then later the child is removed from that home because the parents still didn't do what they needed to do. Sometimes, like, a good example of what might need in-home services is like a really filthy house. Maybe the child is there, it hasn't been hurt, no evidence of like true neglect, but the house is filthy. So maybe they'll open a case and say, okay, we're going to be giving some services, we expect you to clean this to make it a livable environment, and then they don't, and then like more information surfaces, and so then they might remove the child. In that case, there would have been involvement for a while, so we're going to have more information. Jana had talked a little bit about, you might get like even the wrong gender, but in this case, we're going to know a lot more about what's happened because people have been involved. If there is evidence of imminent danger, then that child will be removed from the house immediately. Those are most of the calls that we get are for immediate removals. There's always a judge on call, and a judge needs to approve a child being removed. So if a child gets moved out of the home, the county will start calling the different child placement agencies. Jana, who is here, and Jess are two first and main placement people. So they're on call during the work week. They take turns having the placement phone. After hours, we have somebody on call, and it's the other home supervisors, with Jess and Janet always as a backup. So the home supervisor will get the call and then usually call them, to say, because they know all the families and what the families are open for and would it be a good fit and whatnot. But you might get a call from Jess or Janet during the workdays or a home supervisor after hours. And let me just look and see what yours says for fill in the blanks. Okay, so A, make sure to answer your phone 24/7. It is so heartbreaking when we don't have homes for kids. We don't like turning kids away. We've had 5-year-olds have to go to a residential treatment facility in Denver. 5-year-olds. Sorry, now all my friends are hearing about Henry, so. We don't want to send a 5-year-old to a residential treatment facility in Denver, because we don't have a place for them. And then it's even more frustrating if we have a home, but they just didn't answer the phone. So we really like you to try and think about that and maybe make a different ring. She gave you guys the on-call number, right? Have a different ring for that, so you guys know, and try and answer your phone. Another thing is really important is know what you can just say yes to. Like, if you're we're 0 to 5, boy or girl, or up to 2, fine. Or 0 to 10, boy or girl, up to 0 to 18, whatever your range is, whatever that you can, that's pretty much an automatic yes. That's awesome, because these kids are in a car driving around, or they're sitting in the Department of Human Services waiting for a place to land, hearing people talk about them. If they're siblings, well, do you have a home for one? Can you keep these 2 together? What about these 2? What if we split them in this way? Hopefully they can get them away, but sometimes they're in the car and they're hearing part of these things. We want to provide the least amount of trauma to kids that are coming into here as possible. So quick yeses help that. Another thing is we at Hope and Home are pretty passionate here about age ranges and sibling groups. So we're going to talk about teens, and we're going to talk about sibling groups and keeping them together, and how there's a lot of teens that are sitting with their parents' rights terminated, waiting for an adoptive home, and different things like that. So we will talk about those things because they're important to us, and we are passionate about it. And if you went to the launch, who went to the launch this weekend? Last weekend we had one. Oh, nobody? You guys are all at the next one? Okay, November launch. Well, we have a teen that comes and talks. He was adopted younger, then that was a failed adoption. He was back into the system as a teenager, 15, and he was done. Why would he want a family? But he still had that stirring of a hope that a family would love him and want him. And he ended up in a family that is awesome. Jill Lewis, she leads half of our support groups, and she's an amazing mentor mom here. She adopted him, and so now he's passionate about advocating for other teens, and how horrible it feels to be well, I'm just at the age and nobody wants me and it's useless and pointless and I'll never have hope. But he did find that hope and he did find that family, so he advocates for that, which is really cool. So, you probably hear from Brogan and different things. And we love you guys to get to know some of our teams as they barista. We had one case where this girl, she barista'd all the time. And you guys know about the baristing thing? Okay. And her foster family put a notice in on her. So there was 4 families were we want her, because they knew her from down there. And she got to total opposite experience of not feeling wanted. She got 4 families wanted her, and she got to choose where to go. And that's cool, because when you get to know some of these kids and you get to see them and you realize it's much different to say, a scary teen versus this teen that you met and had eyes on and want to help, because they're just kids who've had really rough lives and you can maybe do something to help them. So we advocate for that. You're going to hear us talking about that. But I also want to tell you, if we call you and it's something that isn't what you want, that you don't feel comfortable, that you really, your heart's saying, no, that's not for me, then say no with your mouth. That is fine. Because we don't want you to say yes with your mouth when your heart's saying no, and then you take these kids and it's not what you wanted and you're feeling upset about that, and then that turns into a no later. because no's later and placement changes are the biggest thing we want to avoid. And it's so much more traumatizing on kids to have to bounce around from home to home. Every time it happens to them, I mean, they'll lose sense of self and life and value and worth, and it traumatizes them more. So that's my way of saying be open, but if you're not, it's okay. Point B is be clear on what you can automatically say yes to. The children are waiting for your reply. And then C is also that we will give you all the information that we have. So this is why I was kind of distinguishing about emergency placement versus a non-emergency placement. If that child had in-home services or been in care before or is coming from a different foster home because we have to move them for some reason, we'll know more. We are obligated to tell you the information we have on that child. If that child has fits and behaviors and hits or has broken things, and we tell you. If we don't tell you, it's because we didn't know. There have been instances where people are like, you did not tell us that this is what they were going to do. It's because we didn't know that's what they were going to do. A lot of times, these behaviors are unpredictable. So for the record, we will tell you it if we know it. And so D, sorry, I have two sets of notes because some are mine. And, do you guys have a D? Yeah. The court-ordered DNN petition is filed when the child is removed from the home. A DNN is dependency and neglect. That's what these cases are called, dependency and neglect cases. So that's what you'll hear. This is a DNN case. So the petition is filed with the courts when the child is removed, and a GAL is assigned, which is the child's lawyer. Any questions on that in the placement process? Oh, I have a few more things to say about the placement. So you get a call from one of us and say, hey, would you take this 8-year-old girl? She was found abandoned in her home with nothing. Okay, so that's what the call you get, and you're like, yes, I'll take that. And then you're like waiting because you said yes, you want to hear, and it's like there's a lot of moving pieces and people who are communicating to make this happen. Maybe you'll then get a call from the caseworker who says, we're bringing the child, we'll be there in 40 minutes or whatever. Anywhere along that process, a family member could be identified. Okay, so then maybe it drags on and you're like, what's going on? Then you get the call, actually she went to aunt. That happens often. I was just in Denver doing an interpretive hour for a family up there. That's when you read your home study, by the way. And she was like, we got 5 calls this week and none of them worked out because they all went to a family member. 5 in a week is like a lot, but that can very much happen. So just because they call and you say yes, doesn't mean for sure that placement's going to happen. They're always looking for family members. From the minute the child is identified as needing an alternative home throughout the length of the case. Because first they want to return the child to, bio parent, but then also to a kin member. So.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Forgive me if this is an ignorant question.
No.
I'm just curious about, in terms of what to expect in terms of number of calls per week of any kind.
What's your age range?
0 to 8.
So we get calls every day, every single day. We're not going to call you for a 16-year-old,
Okay.
If that's your age range. If you ever gave us the inkling, like, we would maybe be open on a case-to-case basis, we'll call you.
Okay.
I mean, that's just we're going to respect what you tell us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We will maybe on a really emergency basis where we're just like, if we could just land this kid in a home and give us some more time so they don't have to be sent, like that 5-year-old, say you were 0 to 2, and we had this 5-year-old that they're like, we're sending them to an orphanage in Denver. You don't have anything? We'll call you and be like, can you take this kid, even temporarily, while we try and figure something out. But in general, we're going to respect what your age range is that you've told us. So it just really depends on what kind of calls we get that week. We do get calls every day for placements.
So when we work with whoever's doing our home study,
Mm-hmm.
like we kind of have preconceived ideas of what we're open to already.
Mm-hmm.
But is there conversation about, like, I don't want to say it because I want you to hold me to it. I would rather take any kid than have them go to a foster home.
Right.
But, I mean, I have little kids at home. There's certain things I want to make sure that I try to protect them from.
Sure.
Right? But I'd rather take somebody for even a couple of days to keep them from going to an
Right.
orphanage somewhere else
Mhm.
while the dust settles.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is there clear lines of how to lay that out when we say this is what we're open to? Like, is that something you coach us on to say?
Or in just relational connection with our home supervisor, that's known. To say
Yeah,
we've got two
really the
empty
best way,
beds.
'cause-
If a 13-year-old is going to be sent to Denver,
Right.
it's not our preferred,
Right.
especially 13-year-old boy, is what
Yeah,
we're going to say.
exactly.
We've got our 7-year-old son, this is
Mhm.
why. But
So your
we'd
home
rather
study
that
is
they
it's an official legal document that, like, if something happened in your home, say you said in your home study, we really want 0 to 3, and then we place you with this 13-year-old, they're going to be like, why would you do that? So it's nice in your home study if you'll be a little more open about, like, and say that, like, we're open on a case-by-case basis to be outside of this age range and to help where needed and things like that. That's good. But, like, we at Hope at Home, and Jess and Jana are so good. Like, these girls are so awesome about really knowing what each family is about. And they supervise the home supervisor. So they get that. They have weekly meetings, like, anything change on the age range? Are there any different openings? If you guys have a placement go home, do they need a break before they take another placement, or do they want to fill that right away? Like, every family is different. And so if you make that known to us, internally, is really good. But so I'm saying in the legal document, you want to kind of just be, and we license every family 0 to 18 for 4 kids. Every family's licensed that way. And then it talks about your preferences. And we do want to say if there's reasons why we shouldn't put a certain kid in there. But we have to be careful because legally what's in there can kind of come back to.
So in California, we were set up with the county out there, and we were all good to go. The only thing we did was some respite care for 2 young boys once that were about the same age as our boy.
Mm-hmm.
But the only time she ever called, our caseworker was kind of cuckoo wacko, but she called. She's like, I've got a sibling group of 3. 2 little ones can share your guest room. So we had bunk beds down there, and the 13-year-old boy is going to share your son's bunk bed upstairs. And I was like, no. I don't know. 13-year-old boy is going to sleep in my son's bunk bed with him if I don't know him.
Right.
Like, maybe if it's somebody who has been around a while or whatever. And,
Yeah.
But that was because of the age ranges. That's the only way you could arrange them into our house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that you guys are always, it's your home. You're always in control of who is coming, or you can say yes or no to anyone. Like, that's in your control, But of course, you're here, and we're here because we want to help kids. So it's just like weighing those things and figuring out what you're comfortable with, what you're willing to do, and communicating with us. For sure. Any other questions about placements? Okay. So after kids are placed, court, is open, and then the caseworker has to create a treatment plan or a family service plan. They'll call them both things. They have to create that plan within 60 calendar days of the out-of-home placement. They usually make that a 12-month minimum. So they're trying to achieve permanency within 12 months.
Sorry, it's a diabetes thing.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, I have a really quick question for you.
Sure.
Good timing, because I get interrupted at the same time. I have Carrie on the phone?
Mm-hmm.
Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea if we were going to make a placement today of that child, Skylar?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's all you got. I'll call you on call, please.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Should we wait a few minutes? I got a slew of texts.
Okay.
Blackhawks are losing.
Blackhawks are hockey.
It's really the only sport I like watching. And then even barely.
It's just because I send them to me.
Here's Henry, little buddy. He was actually born at 26 weeks as well. He survived that, and then a year later, unrelated, he has a brain tumor.
Is this their only child?
No, they have a 4-year-old as well. Yeah.
Any update?
No, just that they're still en route to the hospital. It's just all we're in a small group together, so now everybody's,
Right.
yeah.
Group text.
Mhm. All right, so, okay.
She probably just got a little bit too low, so he's gonna give her, it's what we call a special cane. He's gonna bring her blood sugar back up. She'll take just a couple minutes.
How old is she?
4.
Okay. How long have you been dealing with that?
2 years.
Wow.
Almost 3.
Wow.
She was diagnosed right after my second birthday.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
That's,
rough.
that's tough.
Yeah. But
Come back, Jesus! I'm just done. I'm ready.
could be a lot worse. I remember we were in the hospital with her. She was hospitalized for 5 days after her diagnosis just to get her stable again. And, you know, we were feeling real sorry for ourselves until this very large extended family was sitting in the cafeteria talking about this little boy who was diagnosed with leukemia. Pretty bad immediately, but turned around and realized it could be so much worse.
Wow.
Is she low?
All right?
Yeah, I give her a special.
Still doing what we do.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
She didn't like pizza.
She said she ate some of it.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
They're running around outside. She
Ah.
kind of burns it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Physical exertion will bring it down.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. All right, so they generally set the cases to be about 12 months. And that's the timeline that they would like to achieve permanency, especially for children 5 and under. They call those EPP cases, Expedited Permanency Plan. Cases range all over the place. This is also something very important I want you guys to hone in on here. The caseworker or the treatment team in general might tell you, oh, there's no way this kid's going back to mom. This kid's going to need to be adopted. Or, oh, this is going to be very temporary placement. You're only going to have this kid for 1 week, a couple days, whatever. They don't know. They do not know. Okay? It might be a nice, best educated guess, but they don't know. We've had so many times that people, our families are told this is the way it's going to be, and it's not that way because there's so many factors that can change. So many. You know, like I said, family members coming forward. Maybe this is the time. In Colorado, when kids come into care, it's a fresh start, even if it's their 4th time. Okay? If the case had closed out before, that case is done. The kid comes back in, the family gets a whole new year. Maybe they get the kid back at the end of that year. Case is closed. Then they're in care, or then the parents have them for a while and they come back into care. A whole new year. Okay? That's the rule in Colorado. Right now, I actually just got news today. I said I started working in child welfare 11 years ago. My first case I worked in, that child is back in care for the 4th time. And it's just like, ugh, you know? But the family's going to get a new chance. And they might say, oh, they won't get them back. There's no way. Actually, they did say this to the family that took that placement, and it's just not true. You just don't know. Maybe this family's going to get the kid back again. Maybe it's finally going to go to a different relative. Like, you don't know. So, for your hearts, know that they don't know. They tell you things because they want to tell you, or they think that's what's going to happen, but it's not fact. And it's important that you don't relay things to the kids that aren't fact either. Kids come in and they'll say, are you going to adopt me? And you want to say, oh, of course, I'm going to adopt you. You're just the cutest thing. But that's not a fact. You can't tell them that. You know, I think it's wise to put things back on the courts, because the judge is the one who makes those decisions. And you say, I want to provide a home for you. I love having you here. You know, I enjoy that. Those decisions are made by the judge. It's not my decision, but I'm going to give you a safe place to stay as long as I can. Those sorts of things. And please don't make promises to kids like, I'm taking you to Disneyland. This has happened a couple times, a handful of times. I'm going to take you to Disneyland. We're going in a few months. And the child's gone before that happens. That's a heartbreak for a kid. So just be careful with the words you use with kids. You want to love them and make them part and help them feel included, but don't tell them things you don't know. And there's certain things and reasons why, so they might have that year goal. This is common. Parents don't do a whole lot, like those first 6 to 8 months, and then they kick it into high gear. So then you can't send them home just after a couple months, you know, usually. So then the case extends. Oh, and then they might do bad again, like they have a relapse, but it was just a quick relapse, and now they're back on treatment. I mean, these things extend the case so that it could be long, where kids are in care for 2-3 years and still might go home. That's not common. I'm just telling you what could happen. Most cases, I would say, average somewhere between 6 months to a year. But there's also the cases that go home really quick, or they find a different relative. So you see what I'm saying. You just don't know. Okay. They can amend the treatment plan by the end of that first hearing, but it has to be improved in court. So, and on the treatment plan, the caseworker writes it for the biological family, but there's actually a section in there that talks about foster parent will provide safe place for the child, will transport to visits. That's why I'm saying you're agreeing with the courts that you'll get kids to visits when you take a placement. But it's mostly about the biological family completing the steps that they need to take to be a safe place for their child. So if it's drug related, they're going to have UAs and drug therapy and counseling, and all these things will be written into their treatment plan. And it also is the caseworker's responsibility to show reasonable efforts, that they've helped the family reasonably make these things on their treatment plan happen. So if, say, transportation is a problem and a reason why they can't get to their appointments, the caseworker will provide transportation means for the family, like bus passes or taxi vouchers and things like that. Why I'm telling you all of this too is because sometimes the foster families will say, the caseworker is totally just trying to help the family get the kid home. Well, that's their job. They have to show reasonable efforts, because then they can show in court they did everything possible, and then they have grounds to terminate if the family still didn't do what they needed to do. We want the caseworker to do that because you don't want to get to a termination, and the reason they can't terminate is because reasonable efforts weren't made on the part of the caseworker. So, okay. So number 6 is permanency plan. The set priorities are reunification, the biological parents. They will do paternity search, because a lot of times there are unknown dads. And paternity search is can literally be posting in newspapers looking for unknown dad. Kinship search, where you're looking for kin relatives throughout the nation. So, we have had certain cases where dad's sister, so aunt, finds out the kids are in care after a while. So maybe they've been with you for 8 months, and then the aunt comes forward and said, oh my gosh, I'm totally an option for them. I didn't realize, or now I'm ready, or whatever the case is. And then they can do an ICPC, which is a home study for kin. It's shorter of a process. It's not like as lengthy as the process you guys go for, but it's still a home study where they're assessing for safety and risk factors and things like that. And then the child could be moved to a kin person. There's also kin-like. It's not as common, but it's like, best friend of so-and-so or somebody they grew up with, a neighbor or something like that could be a kin-like person that they would consider reunifying with. And fourth is adoption. Those are the orders of priorities on the county for reunification and achieving permanency. They can change throughout, so they'll be written in the and talked about in the review hearings about what is the set priorities for permanency for this child. It'll be return to biological parent. That's always what it's going to be starting as. Return to biological parent with an option to search for kin, something like that. Throughout the case, as it lengthens, then they might change it in there and have concurrent planning where it's reunification with biological parent or adoption by a non-relative. And then you'll see that sort of language in the review hearings. But no matter what they are saying, it can change. They do review hearings to monitor the progress of the treatment plan throughout the case. So they're assessing the child's safety in the placement, if reasonable efforts are being made, the continued need for the appropriateness of the placement the child's in, the extent of compliance with the family on the case. So they're reviewing all these things in court. Now when it comes to court, you guys can go because it's an open courtroom. It's open to the public. I always have thought that it's beneficial to go so you can hear what's going on. Jana thinks it's not beneficial. She thinks it's taxing to the families, it weighs you down, and it's not necessary. So you can kind of take those two views. One thing that I do, though, highly, highly encourage is that you really think about your relationship with the biological family. I think she probably talked about the importance of that, like maybe with Icebreakers. If you guys have a decent relationship with the biological family and things are going well, and then you show up to court, sometimes they can see that as invasive. So you want to be careful that that's not something that would jeopardize the relationship that you do have, because then it's not worth it. But it is nice to get more information because there's, privacy rules, and you can't hear a lot about what's happening on the case just from the team some of the time. So you could also send somebody in your stead too if you don't want to jeopardize the placement or the relationship or whatever. You can send somebody you guys trust to go hear what's going on. So you're going through this case and there's enough evidence to show that the family's done well. They've completed their treatment plan and the steps that they needed to do. They're producing evidence of a safe environment. Then the child will be returned home. You'll also know kind of how things are going with the plan, because if they get increased visitation and more visits, then the parents are doing pretty well and they're working towards reunification. Once in a while, they might do sort of like a make or break, like there's not enough to make or break the case, and so they'll give them more to see if they can do it or not. So it's not always as sure, like, oh, things are great, they're getting them that, but they are giving them that opportunity. So 75% of cases return back to family. Of those, 10 to 15% return back into foster care again. Of the 75.
75% of cases, 75% of kids that are placed return to the family.
Yes.
And of those 75%.
10 to 15 come back.
Well, those are decent numbers. That means 85 of them stay with their families after they go back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a one-time shot for most of the kids.
Yeah. And by return, they mean either to biological parents or kin. So it's important to remember that the caseworker, the courts, they're looking for safety, not preference. In this whole team and journey, you guys are considered professional parents. So if they're gonna like weigh the preference versus safe, preference is like your home wins. It just automatically already won because you didn't abuse and neglect them, and you like have done all these things to come and show that you're a fit person to take on these kids. That's not what they're looking at. They're looking at safety. I have seen a kid return to a homeless shelter. I've only seen it once in my 11 years, but that happened because you can't. Poverty is not a reason to keep kids from their parents. But I've also seen, this was crazy, parents' rights terminated on lack of empathy, which again, like one time in 11 years. And you know how I said they get a brand new case each time? Well, this case just happened to work out where she had 3 different terminations, but they all ran together because she got pregnant back to back. So her case was open the whole time. Rights terminated twice. Baby's born. So it was one ongoing case. And so they were able to establish, she's been in therapy now for 6 years, and the therapist is not seeing any real change. She's checking the box and going through the motions, but nothing is different. And through 2 days of grueling testimony, they were able to prove and show that she had no empathy and no ability to like relate to her children, and had not changed along all those times. So, yeah. So yeah, they're looking for safety, and they're making sure that these parents have completed what they need to on their treatment plan. They also can do kinship placement, which I've already said can happen at any point in the case. And when they can get custody, it can be either temporary or permanent custody, and the parents can still keep their rights when they go to a kin. They don't have to terminate to give a relative permanent custody. But yeah.
Oh, I just said, oh.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But then, if they do need to terminate rights because reunification can't happen, there's no kin. Number 10 is termination of parental rights, and that can be voluntary or involuntary. Parents can say, they've gone through this process and they just know they're not going to win, so that could be one reason. They know they don't want to go through a grueling court case to prove that they're an unfit parent, so they'll say, I'm relinquishing my rights. And they have to go through relinquishment counseling, and then they can voluntarily give up their rights. Or they can involuntarily be terminated, and that's when the caseworker and the GAL and the county attorney's office have to prove that that was an unfit parent. And so there's a trial that happens, and the judge rules on that. And those are hard, and they're very sad. It's happy and sad on this end of it, that this child can now be adopted and they can be in a safe place, but there's always such a heartbreak and loss, and any family that I've seen walk through that, they mourn that as well, because it's hard to see somebody have to go through that. Also, I think sometimes people have voluntarily relinquished their rights because they see that their child's in a good place and they want to give them that last gift. Sometimes people stay friends. Sometimes people stay in touch. There's all sorts of circumstances and ways that bio parents can stay involved. Once rights are terminated and you adopt those, completely up to you, totally to your discretion. But I've seen people set up an email account that's just for that person so that they can send pictures once in a while. My best friend actually adopted through here, and she did that, and her son, when he turned 10, was asking a lot of questions, and he had been really traumatized, but he wanted to face that, and he just kept saying, I just want to ask them, why did you do this? Why? And they're like, we don't know if you'll get the kind of answer you're looking for, but he was insistent upon it. So they set up a meeting with them, and the mom was able to say, I'm so sorry, it was wrong, and he needed to hear that and could just move on. And after that, he doesn't obsess about it so much anymore. And they still have this email of communication open, but it's not they're trying to see each other or something like that all the time. But now the kids have access and know they can talk to those parents if they want to at some point. So it's nice. This is why I say it's good not to jeopardize the relationship, because you never know. A lot of times kids return home and then they still keep a relationship, and you can see the kids once in a while. And so anyway, there's just a lot of ways that can go. But the parents' rights then get terminated at that point, either voluntarily or involuntarily. If it's involuntarily, there is an appeal process. The biological parents have 42 days. It just changed. It used to be 21, but just changed to 42 calendar days to submit an appeal. So since it's calendar days and it's from the time the judge signs the order, it can be a couple of months, several months that the family can decide that they're appealing. Once the rights are terminated, though, even if they're appealing, the parents don't have rights to the kids anymore. So there might be an appeal process, and so the kids will still be in foster care while you're waiting out that appeal process, but you're not going to have visitation with that parent anymore. The courts review it in Denver, and that takes 3 to 12 months to be reviewed. And then it can be reviewed by the Supreme Court if there's a second appeal filed. And I have not actually seen that in my 11 years, a second appeal filed. So, yeah.
During the appeal process, who has parental rights? Once
The rights stay with the county at that point.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So, matters of things like immunization or what school they go to or whatever.
Right, you'll still be working with the caseworker on that stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So that would kind of be temporarily the case for 42 days, even after.
Yes.
You
Mm-hmm.
gotta wait to see.
Yeah, the rights are terminated, so at that point.
But it doesn't come final until day 43 when no appeal is filed.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Or sometimes they'll waive that right prior. They can do that. Yeah. And then 12, adoption, which is one of our favorite things to celebrate here. But it's not final until the gavel is dropped at the adoption hearing. You just want to be careful with your hearts and the kids' hearts, because you just don't know what could happen until it's all done. Now, I have not seen anything disrupt from termination of rights to, well, that's not true. I've not often seen anything disrupt an adoption, but there can be some really weird last minute. There was one case where the parents were the mom was getting her rights terminated, and the whole case she had denied knowing who dad was. And in that last trial, she gave up dad's name. Her rights were terminated, but then they had to find this dad, and he was a fit parent who had no idea he had a kid. And so then that child went to him. And the foster mom had that little boy from age just a few months to 3. So that was heartbreaking. But they stayed in contact. So she's like auntie now, because he was like, this is my child, and I didn't know and wanted to parent him. But at the same time, he recognized that this was, valuable relationship, and she loved him. And so she became like an aunt to him, and they stay in contact and have visits sometimes. Yeah. So it's not often, though. But that's why you just have to know in your heart that something could come up. But usually once the termination happens, and then after no appeals filed, they'll set a adoption date. And then you'll have an adoption worker that comes and works with you and does an add-on to your home study, which I call an adoption home study. And then it's like party time. And for the record, every judge is different. So we've had judges bring out cupcakes and teddy bears and balloons and make a party of it. And then there's judges who are just case 45675, final order, you're adopted. And you're just oh. Do you know this kid's been in care for 6 years? So they're all different. But Hope and Home loves to celebrate with you guys. We try and go to adoptions, our staff. It's just, it's hard work, so getting to be part of that and celebrate permanency for kids is huge. You're always welcome to use our building. I don't know if anybody's mentioned this to you for anything, for birthday parties. People have had engagement parties here. There's actually been 2 weddings downstairs. Yeah. I've had 2 birthday parties for my kids here. It's just a fun space for a party. It's free. And tons of adoption parties here. So you're welcome to use it for that. So just a few more things that we're going to talk about before we end. And one is I want to do a little sort of activity with you. And so I want you to think about where you guys might be in about 10 minutes. I'll just give you a hint because I said we're going to end soon. Let's see what time it is anyway. We're ending early. Where you might be in 3 days. I meant to say 5 hours first because it's my favorite, thinking about being in my bed, because everybody loves their bed, right? It's like your bed. It's like your safe place. You get to go to your bed. Where you might be in a few days. If you've got any, what is today? Monday? Oh my goodness. Let's say 6 days. Any good weekend plans? What you might be doing in a couple of weeks. Maybe in a few months, where you might be, what you picture. And I just want you to remember that when these kids come into your home, all of those things that they had known and their expectations of what their life looked like and what they thought it was going to be got ripped away. And they don't know if that bed that you're providing for them is going to be a bed that they get just that night or the next several nights, or if they're ever going to go back to their other bed, see their family again. They're scared. And in our normal world and our normal lives, like Jana's often here when I'm saying this, which is gone. If Jana lost her home and lost her family and lost her bedroom and lost her loves and the things she cared about, and maybe her dog, and maybe her neighbor's dog was something that was important to her, or her friends in her social life, if she lost all of those things, I would give her space to mourn and grieve and be angry and upset, and I would give her space to travel through all those emotions and be angry. And foster care is one of the few places that we expect people to experience the hardest trauma life has to offer. And a lot of times people expect them to be grateful and to behave and to say please and thank you and to get good grades and to understand what you've sacrificed and what you're doing for them. And that's not reality. These kids need to be able to feel the loss that they went through. And we as adults, we're talking about how are we going to, calm ourselves. And I don't really know how to think about calming myself sometimes. These kids don't know how to calm themselves. They don't know how to process all those emotions. These are the hardest emotions that human experience has to go through. These losses and this hurt and this trauma and the amount of abuse. So you need to allow them freedom in your homes to experience those things. They're going to come in and they're going to have hard times. But the cool thing is that you can kind of rebuild some of those for them. You can help them understand that you want to provide a safe place for them. You want to, this is your bed that you get to sleep in as long as we're able to give it to you. And that's hard because you don't know how long they're going to be here. We're just talking about all these things, and are you guys processing gosh, there's so many unknowns into these kids coming into their house. They're experiencing all of those unknowns. That's their life. But you get to help build that for them, and you get to help figure out what some of those losses are that we have no idea about. Literally, I can't tell you how many times the neighbor's dog was something that mattered to a kid. And who's thinking about the neighbor's dog? Well, they are, because that's one thing that made them feel safe and loved, that neighbor's dog. And it's gone, and nobody cares. Nobody even would ever think of that. Or these kids will have loyalty, and there will be things and traditions that they loved from their family. Because, yes, these parents did bad things, but they also provided some things for them as well. And so they might have gotten Sunday morning pancakes. That's the thing that they got all the time. And now that's just totally gone, and nobody knows, and nobody cares. So if you talk about pancakes to me, that's going to piss me off. And you're going to be like, why? I just want to give them a pancake. cake, you know, and it's like that struggle between figuring out what these things are. But you have to remember they just lost everything, and you're part of helping build that for them. And that's a real privilege to get to be in that position, and that's why I love foster parents more than other people. I really do. You guys are the best because you guys are in this position to take these kids and to build into them what they need. So, also want to talk about questions that kind of come with the territory in foster care and adoption. So you just sometimes wouldn't believe it. Maybe you would, because this world's like a little cuckoo. Some of the questions that people might get sometimes, or some of the things that people will say to you in front of kids. Especially if you have like maybe several placements that kind of come and go. You know, like, what do you got? Like some weird kid factory? You buy kids? I mean, people will just say all sorts of random things. So you want to just have that in your mind. One friend said he got the question several times, like, is that your real kid? And so he said he would like touch and be like, they are real. Sure feel real to me, and just like make a joke out of it. Or a lot of times if you'll take different ethnicities, people will ask, what country did they come from? What country did this kid come from? And they're like, this city we're in? And they're like, no, really, what country are they from? And part of what's really good in that is that you guys will get to know the kid. Every kid's different, but you want to empower them that this is their story. And so you can help them, you know, just shut it down, the questions that come. You can help them be empowered to make jokes or to kind of share a little bit, like whatever these kinds of kids are comfortable. Another thing that's common is figuring out how to introduce children, because you might say, this is my son and this is my foster son, and that could be devastating to a kid. On the other hand, I've seen kids so proud that they're in foster care that they're like, I'm the foster kid. Like, I'm proud of that. So you can't just automatically rule out that foster care is a bad word. I, in general, say, you know, don't introduce them as a foster child, because that you know, most of the kids aren't going to like that. They want to feel included, and so don't say this is my son and my other kid. You can just say this is Mike and this is Jerry. You know, you don't have to have labels to everything. But if they're proud of being in foster care and they want to embrace that, that's awesome. You know, so it's just, you got to keep in mind that every kid's different. You're going to want to journey through that with them, help them figure out the best way to be identified. And sometimes it's, this is my friend, or this is my special buddy who's staying with me, or whatever, you know, but arrive at that together, age appropriately, of course. I mean, little kids are just going to call you mom and dad. That's what they do, especially if you have other kids in your home. That can sometimes become an issue with the biological family. So it can sometimes be recommended that you try and come up with another fun, different kind of nickname, like, you know, I can't think of anything right now, and I've had a billion, but all I can think of is Nana, but that's like the worst. Probably don't want to be Nana.
You've got a kid across the street who lives with his stepdad and his mom,
Uh-huh.
and he calls his stepdad D.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
kind of like that.
Yes.
You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Perfect example.
My stepdad, who is now my adopted dad, I always call him Pops.
Yes, perfect.
Papa
Thank
Cool.
you.
That's what I always call him.
Yeah, come up with names that are more familiar and intimate and caring, but maybe not mom and dad, because that can be, you know, like, I don't want to call you mom and dad, I have a mom and dad or something. So you just, there's no like magic outline to that, because every kid and situation is different, but you want to be thinking about that and be aware of that. And that's all I have. Any questions?
That would be Captain Fantastic.
You'll have it in your aesthetic required to be called.
That's awesome. Captain Fantastic.
Also, don't call me Captain Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and good night.